Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Pennyworth. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with Thomas's return to London, and obviously it's not 100% the happy reunion he was hoping for in many different regards, but also Thomas was reluctant to come back because he was kind of prepared for his return to be a little chilly, because he knew that Martha would know what he did. I mean, he left with the gun and everything. His dad happens to be dead when he's in Gotham. Well, while in the time he's in Gotham. So she pieced it together. She wasn't sure, but there's a part of her that kind of knew. And he's like, he didn't want to come home to that. Because it's for him, it's like, how could I just let that man walk away? He almost had me kill you. I almost came so close to killing him. What? I'm supposed to just let him walk away? And she's like, oh, what am I supposed to do? Like, does it make you more of a man that you did? And he's like, yes, on some level, partially, because he's like, isn't it a man's duty to protect his family? And I don't know if there was a right way to handle this. I mean, granted, he shouldn't have done what he did, but for her, it was the purposes of, you could have gotten your father sent to jail. You didn't have to kill him, because it is a very, once again, that stain of, not only did you kill someone, you killed your own father. That's not going to go away, no matter how much your dad, in your mind, might have deserved it. Because he's like, it isn't just me who wanted him dead. You wanted him dead too, Martha, whether you kind of admit it or not. And it's just, for Thomas, it's just, he didn't know what to do. He even says later on, he didn't know, he wanted to kill his dad, but when he was in Gotham, he went there with the pure intentions of killing his father, but he didn't know he could actually go through with it until he actually pulled the trigger. So it is a situation of, how do you move past that? Because yes, Martha already had the issues of every time she looked at Thomas, she couldn't help but think of when he ended up attacking her. Yes, it wasn't him, but that's such a hard thing to distinguish from, because yes, he might have been mind controlled, but it was still Thomas, so that trauma still associated with that. And yes, she missed Thomas. She was like, right, you could have called me, you could have contacted me, you could have talked to me while you were in Gotham, but you didn't. No matter how much I reached out to you, you never reached out back. So that's where we get into the complicated territory there. And before they can even finish hashing that out, they find out that the person they left their daughter with isn't actually Mary. The real Mary showed up, and I was like, whoa. I'm like, immediately, me being who I am, I'm like, I am not well versed enough in the DC, but I'm like, when I hear, shapeshifter connected to, shapeshifter connected to Batman, I immediately think, Clayface is I'm sure there might be other shapeshifter, but Clayface is a go-to, just because it's the Harley Quinn cartoon keeps Clayface in the general zeitgeist, but also it's just even the show Gotham did a version of Clayface as well, so I think that's what kind of makes it solidify that even more. But I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, so it's whoever this is I want 1,000 pounds, and eventually leads Martha and Thomas to a park, and it's like, right, Thomas, I want you to confess, which he did, but I'm like, I don't know what that's really going to do. You're at a park with a whole bunch of other stuff, and you're just going to seem like the crazy person who's just yelling out, you're Thomas Wayne and you murdered your father. And even him saying the lines of I believe I destroyed my family in the process doing it. So, and then they had called Alfred in for backup, because he knew, right, this has to be more than money. It's a little bit about the money, but it's more so about destroying the Wayne name. I'm like, why go after Thomas? I'm like, if anyone probably destroyed your name, in the way, because Thomas hasn't had enough to fully do with the Wayne family. He took over, a lot of affairs after he murdered his dad, but I'm like, he hasn't been associated with the Waynes at least enough to have done anything, maybe his dad, but I'm like, what's it? It's right, just because his dad's dead doesn't cleanse the Waynes some of their issues, because, obviously Bruce has to constantly deal with the ramifications of stuff that his family was associated with. Once again, that also just depends on the storyline for whatever respective Batman story is being told, and once again, on whether or not the Waynes are good or bad, or whatever the case may be, right? So there's that. They all end up getting captured, and to me, I was like, all right, who's it going to be? And it's revealed to Virginia. I was like, dude, I didn't even cross my mind, but it makes sense. Obviously, she has beef with the Waynes. It's like, right, basically you jeopardized my entire operation. You didn't even kill Martha like I wanted you to, and you and Alfred got me in trouble. It's like, she's like, the CIA was seconds away from firing me, and the only way I could get them back in their good graces if I let them experiment on me. Like, because they figured from the beginning this had to be like a PWE situation for the person to look exactly like Mary and convince him. So I even love Alfred being like, yeah, even if you were to kill me looking like my mom, I don't see it. And it's like, yeah, because my mom's kind of got a little bit of a sparkle, which I'm like, oh, that's super sweet. But yeah, Virginia, I was like, that's such a neat twist. Because I didn't see that. It didn't even cross my mind to even put her on the suspect list. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm assuming her ability isn't like, it's not a full-blown clay face of like, oh, you can mold yourself, because she legitimately took off like a mask. So it's very much kind of almost, I guess, almost Darkman-esque. Like Darkman, there's a character in the comics called Jane Doe. Isn't that her ability? Because I could be mistaken. Did Black Mask's daughter, who was actually Kate in Batwoman, spoilers, wasn't her ability kind of similar? Wasn't there something kind of, I don't know, because that was more so hypnosis and stuff like that, to make her think, Kate make herself think she was Black Mask's daughter. I don't know, because I know there's a character named Jane Doe, and because I feel like Jane Doe's power is something like that, kind of like a Darkman thing. It's like, it's a mimicry thing. And that's what I think Virginia's power was. It wasn't a full-blown, like, shape-shift, but more so like, right, I have, like, a proper, like, mask. I can mimic your voice and your nuance, and just, like, I can mimic you as a person. I just need the proper, like, CIA resources to make a perfect copy of Mary's, like, face and stuff like that. So I think that's what that comes down to, but it's like, it's more so a mimicry rather than shape-shifting ability. But I'm like, I think the character Jane Doe in the comics has something like that, but maybe I'm wrong. God, that's actually come up quite a bit in some DC stuff. I'm like, yeah, because it came up in Batwoman, like I said, a handful of times, because it's not only Kate's circumstances, it's also like Tommy, aka Hush, did it pretending to be Bruce Wayne. So it's just interesting to think about, like, oh, like, and obviously that's all Batman related too. So it's just interesting just to think about. But yeah, Virginia's on some, like, insane shit because, yeah, she was actually here for a different mission, but she's like, well, since I'm in London, I might as well exact my revenge. So, Thomas, I'm giving you another opportunity to kill your wife. I mean, look at her. She'll never forgive you. Do you actually think she'll ever look at you the same way again? And even he admits, no. And she's like, this way you can kill your wife. You can even blame it on me, but you get a fresh start with your daughter and never have to worry about, you know, Martha's judgments, or the fact that she'll always look at you as the man that murdered his father, will always look at you as a killer. So that was always, but obviously Thomas was never going to go along with it. And I love they kind of duke it out, and she's just complaining like, oh, like, how were you ever a CIA officer? Like, if it was up to me, you would have never gotten past training or something like that. So they're duking it out, and she's ready to kill Thomas. Luckily, Alfie got free and is like, oh, stop. And she's like, well, you're going to turn me over to your prime minister, because we have a lot to talk about. Martha was like, fuck that. Popped her. It's like, you kidnapped my daughter. The fact of the matter is, we can't let your psychopathic ass, like, run free, because there's always a chance you'll come back eventually later. Also, probably didn't want to take the chance she knew that Aziz might actually cut a deal with her, because it's like, right, finding out, you know, it's the espionage game of finding out what the U.S. is up to. So it's like, right, I'll talk to Aziz, tell him what the CIA actually sent me here for. But it's kind of like, right, it's probably like all containing to the lullaby stuff, because that is, well, for one, Aziz finds out later on, like, the CIA probably doesn't know that Glub is dead now. They were probably hoping to kind of get Glub, or maybe get their hands back on Lullaby, because all things related to Lullaby are probably still here in London, so. But at the end of the day, it's all kind of resolved. I did love the whole thing with Alfie telling that story to Sam about, like, oh, like, the lion and needing the mouse's help, and it's like, oh, the mouse is too small. He's like, yeah, like that, you know, it's like, right, but the mouse could be helpful. Oh, speaking of mouse, like that hairpin of yours, and was able to get free. So, and I think also, like, her running over, hugging him, and calling him Alfie and stuff, and her just being adorable made him. It is that thing of like, right, when you see other people's kids, even if you have your reservations about kids, when you're around other people's kids, it makes you go like, man, I kind of want some of my own, you know. And then you're kind of like, it's that eternal back and forth. I think a lot of people have. And for Alfie, he found out last episode that, hey, Sandra's pregnant with my child. So he's like, right, I'm trying to do the right thing. Let's get married. And she straight up says, no. Which I completely understand. Sandra has constantly put her heart out there for Alfie time and time again. And he's continuously stepped on it multiple times. So it's like, right, the last time they got together, she was like, hey, like, I'm not expecting anything. Like, I just like, let's just have fun. She's like, I know not to expect anything. So let's just, and Alfie... For Alfie, it's always just been kind of like, he always picks kind of unavailable women, and there's always like, this woman has always been here. She's like, I love you. I probably always will love you on some extent, but it's like, I'm not going to get married just for the sake of making you feel better about the decision of like, right, yes, you didn't want the child and you want to do better, but it's like, getting married just for that sake, it's like, no, that's not a good reason to get married just because it's like, right, do you even love me? He's like, yeah, sure, lots. It's like, yeah, you care about her, but you don't love her, and it's like, you don't love her the way she loves you. It is obvious to anyone that watched this show that Sandra has always cared more about and loved Alfie more than he's loved her. Granted, yes, he has his own demons and stuff. I'm sure the Esme thing kind of has, because he's never gotten that close to another person since Esme, and even then I kind of felt like that was him rushing into it, because it was like, right, you were kind of using marriage as a kind of escaping your own demons to some extent too. But I'm also, I can understand, like, after everything with Esme, you would like put your heart on pause. Like, obviously, like, him and Zara kind of had those conversations a couple episodes back, so. Which I'm like, does Sandra know about Esme? I would assume she does, but I actually don't remember if she does. I would assume she does. Either way, I completely support and understand, I was about to say Esme, Sandra saying no to Alfie, and he's kind of getting pissed off about it, because he's like, no, of course I don't want the kid, but like, that doesn't matter. It's like, yes, it does matter, because for her, it's like, I don't want you to be in a situation where you can grow resentful to me and my child. So I'd say daughter, because like, well, I mean, we don't know. It could be a Sam and Bruce situation of like, right, so she could end up having a son first, and I mean, once again, it could just be a Julia thing. I would think that would be interesting, because well, we don't know how old. I mean, who knows if once again, the Bruce equation kind of comes up, if it does come up at all in this series, but in comparison to Julia, because I don't know, like, I mean, the versions of Julia I've seen have always been young-ish, maybe 20s or 30s. Like the comic book version I saw, and then like the one for Batwoman was like in the 20s or 30s. So like, that's why I'm like, I would assume she's going to be younger than Bruce, but once again, I don't know. I mean, because Sam is like a little girl, so once again, depending on what they decide to do with that and this whole continuity and stuff like that, but because this might not necessarily be, like I said, it might not be a Julia situation. Once again, sad. It's a sad thing to say, but like, because of the continuity and stuff like that, the show's doing its own thing. So there's a part of me that's like, well, you don't have to worry about like something bad happening with the pregnancy, but because it is that thing, you're also kind of like, you never know. It just always comes down to what they want to do, whether or not they want to make that the thing. And it's like, oh, like things kind of don't work out, and eventually he does have Julia later on down the line, but who knows how they're going to play that out in this. It might just be a thing of like, right, just like the Sam situation, but once again, we don't know how that's going to play out in its continuity. Either way, but he does tell his mom about it. He's like, yeah, Sandra's pregnant. It's like, oh, so I tried to marry her, and she's like, oh, I hope you didn't say it like that. He's like, well, I did, and she's like, well, but she turned me down regardless, saying like, neither one, marriage or kids, is what I want. And his mom asked him, it's like, is it what you want? And he says, honestly, he's like, yeah, it is. And it's like, and she's like, right, good. Like, then show her, prove to her that it is. Because for her, that's why she's hesitant. Because she believes, like, right, Alfie's just going to go along with it. Because she's like, I don't want to be a responsibility. I don't want to be an obligation. I want you to be with me and the child because you want to be. Because you staying here when you don't want to be, that's how you grow resentful. So because I was about to say, it's like, you have to tell your mom that she has a grandbaby, and he's like, yeah, so how's Roger gonna feel about this? His girlfriend is a granny, and she's like, oh, shut up, you. And I'm like, I love their dynamic. So everything ultimately ends up working out on that front. On the other side of things, there's the whole situation with Sally. After the aftermath of the last episode, she rolled up and she's asking for Dave Boy's help. They go to the party, and obviously Dr. Glove's body is gone, but in that moment, he started piecing together, wait, a doctor, the psychedelic drug, was it Dr. Glove? It's like, well, how do you know? And it's like, okay. Then he runs into Patricia, which I'm like, has he never interacted with Patricia before? Maybe Alfie's the only one that's ever interacted with, because I'm like, I'm even thinking, like, did Baza ever, like, interact with her, I don't, even in, like, season 1 or something like that, I don't, no, like, gosh, yeah, there was no conversation, but I was about to say, like, yeah, he knows who she is, because, like, she got on a plane with the lady, and I think, wasn't Dave Boy there when, Gully's wife left to go live in the U.S.? Wasn't her name Melanie? When she went to go, when she left and went to the U.S. with Patricia, I'm like, wasn't Dave Boy there? I remember Alfie and his mom were, maybe Thomas, but I don't remember if Dave Boy was there or not. So I was like, because they didn't have anything of like, oh, you're one of Alfie's friends. Like, I know you somewhat, you know, like, oh, because your connections to Thomas and stuff. Like, that didn't come up, but it might just be like yeah, we don't need to cover that in the episode. But it's like, yeah, it was just kind of unfamiliarity. Just kind of, oh, yeah, thanks for saving me. I'm bouncing. It's like, I think they probably definitely know each other, so. But I love how much she was just kind of like, cool, Francis is going to give that drug to other people. 50 or 60 people took that and went crazy, like, what's a whole city of London going to do? So I'm getting the hell out of town. It's like, once again, I love how you constantly find yourself in these dangerous situations, Patricia. You come out okay, and you just kind of bounce like it's nothing. It's like, there's going to be a lot of deep-seated trauma, yet for whatever reason, you still decide to come back to London, even though there's so much trauma associated. It's like, well, what do you got waiting for you at home? She's not really tied to the Wayne Enterprises stuff, the family business. Dad's dead. She kind of doesn't, really. She's kind of like, oh man, it sucks, but she's not too brokenhearted about it, so. Now it is a situation of, well, what do we do about this? How do we stop all this from happening? And Dave Boy's like, well, we wait for Alfie. And Sally slaps him and is like, wait, you're not an idiot. I'm not with, like, if you were stupid, I wouldn't be with you. But the fact is, you're the one that connected this to the Lullaby and Dr. Glove and Jessica. So we got to figure this out. And she's like, I'm sorry, I didn't see what was. And they bang it out. They do the thing. They shag. And then, like, he wakes up and it's someone there. And I'm like, who is that? And it's like, oh, it's Peg with the baby. She's like, yeah, I'm looking for my sister. It's like, yeah, I'm surprised neither you nor Alfie have ever brought up the fact is, oh yeah, Bet left and she kind of didn't come back. We haven't heard from her a minute. It's like, well, she did kind of have an off-screen death. I mean, off-screen to you guys because you were completely unaware. I mean, everyone was completely unaware that she didn't actually die. She was on the cusp of it. We'll get to that in a second. But I was like, yeah, there's no way they were actually going to just kill off Bet like that. I was like, especially where she dies so close to Salt Slab. I'm like, they're going to find her and patch her up and make her a PWE. And I figured as much. I mean, especially, it's like spoilers. I knew it just because like her name was in Paloma Faith's name was in the credits. So like I kind of knew ahead of time of like, oh yeah, I knew she was going to. Actually, I really like the name Paloma. I think that's a very, I mean, obviously like it's because I don't think that's, I mean, it's because she's a singer, so I think that's her stage name, isn't it? Kind of her performance name, so. I mean, regardless, I think it's a very lovely name. It's just in general, Paloma, and just being called Paloma Faith. I just thought that was kind of lovely. I don't think I've ever talked about that, but anyway, she ends up tying up in Lucius's story because Lucius breaks into level 7 and he's trying to free all of the people that were being all the PWEs. And man, General Thirds. I mean, it's like because they're not seen it well. They're seen as people, but they're seen as expendable because of what they are. And for him, it's like, right, Aziz tried to tell him, like, hey, stop all of this. I have authority. But it's like, no, Parliament gave me all the authority. But it's like, yeah, you have this authority until you do something illegal. And he's like, I'm doing something illegal? Where's your proof? Haha. And it's like, man, I mean, for him, it's like, yeah, I'm trying to fight this war that we're at war with the U.S., China, and Soviet Russia for the purposes of every government around the world has our own PWE program, and we can't lose this arms race. It's just another extension of the weapons arms race around the world. So the fact that they experiment on one of those, because I don't know if they're just straight up taking PWEs, but it seems like they're also just they're kidnapping regular people. Like that guy that was on the table, I don't know if he was actually a PWE already being experimented on, or whether he was just a regular person that they're trying to make into a PWE. Because later on, Lucius was able to kind of let them all out, but by the time he got back, was it Cecile? She was already gone, so who knows what happened. But that guy strapped to, the table got literally burned up that nothing was left but a crispy skeleton, and they're so nonchalant about it. Oh damn, that didn't work. Oh well, moving on. And it's just the callousness of it, because it's just it's a means to an end, and it's just evil scientists, working for the power hungry general, trying to do whatever he can to win, amass more power and do what he believes is right for the country, because he sees them as weapons. It's right. For him, it's these people are nothing more than guns or cannons or any type of weapon. They're objects, they're not people. That's how he views them. So, but lo and behold, he runs into Bet, who is super strong. We have no idea what her other circumstances are. From the outside, she looks pretty normal. I mean, Salt did too, until you open up his shirt and saw his chest and his teeth and everything. So he looked normal, but who knows what Bet's circumstances, what's going on beneath her clothes and stuff. But it's cool. So they're trying to rescue everyone, but General Thursday returns, so they're in quite a sticky situation. Then you add on top of all of that, while that's all happening, you have Francis poisoning the milk supply, and that's going to be how he ends up getting the entire entirety of London under the control of the lullaby. So a lot of collision courses on that front. The next episode is the season finale, so it's going to be interesting to see whether this all gets completely wrapped up next episode. These two different storylines, will they ultimately end up colliding? Will they be resolved separately? Will they bleed over? Will there be one that's resolved, and then will the PWE stuff kind of, Lucius and Bet be either they find the way out of this or they get rescued, and that's resolved for now, but the PWE element continues forward, and the Francis kind of V for Vendetta element continues going forward, or would that be resolved? And it's going to be interesting to see how the season finale plays out, and what this kind of means going forward in the future. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.